Here's the thing, this is the last point of all, but it's an open-ended one. It can be as short as long as what we'll see, which is this, right? I've picked for my ugly point Vitality's PR approach. And the reason why I say this is quite a subtle point. I think, because if you didn't notice, because Vitality's done what, listen, is one of the blockbuster moves of all time. They've brought in two of the most decorated players of the last few years from a totally different region, culture, language, everything. They're trying to make this new squad, which is pairing ZywOo with these major winners, with Sonic, the greatest coach ever. And they're trying to do this whole system. If you notice, like one thing I'll credit them for is they're trying to basically go the approach that Astralis themselves were early on. Like you do team building exercises and you make people learn each other's languages and stay together and you overcome basically all the sort of minor issues that people would expect you could have in an international team. You do things that take you a step further to like bridging those gaps, resolving issues, etc. That's all great, but my downside is this. Because they've done this flurry of PR, because they're doing this move where they're trying to get the bigger headlines, they've done all these different interviews, the CEO, the esports director, right? The approach they've taken basically, I think personally, they've tried to just do a bit of a G2. What they're trying to do is say a bunch of really big, potentially incendiary, sometimes controversial statements, which gets you some eyeballs on you. And then the idea is why G2 did it back in the day to a great effect. If your team is also really good, once the eyeballs are on you, it's like Floyd Mayweather, then you perform and it emphasizes how wonderful you are and makes you a huge star, right? The problem is this. G2 can pull it off because they have people like also who have fabulous charisma. Even if he's telling you to your face, like, fuck you, I fucked your wife, he'd have like a grin on his face where you know he's being playful, isn't he? He's being cheeky. So as a result, it doesn't sting the same way. You know, if he said like, oh, we're better than Na'Vi, you know he doesn't really mean it. He's just saying it to provoke him. The problem is, if you don't have that aspect shaded in where you know the person's not totally serious, you can look like a clown. And unfortunately, some of the statements they've come off with in the Vitality PR, I don't know if it's the language translate. It hasn't landed. So I'll give you an example of some of the small grab bag they've said within the last week or so. They basically tried to imply there was a star player they could have signed but didn't sign and that he just only wanted money. And then bizarrely, that's been implied it was Rops, even though as far as I've heard behind the scenes, it isn't Rops. It's someone else. But even so, why are you... I don't know why you're doing that already. You're almost being like... If my angle, if I'm Vitality, is I chose these two players because they're amazing. They're people who've won majors, and I'm going to make a new squad and have a new era. That's almost like I could have signed other stars as well, but they just care about money, so I signed these guys. It was like that's almost like you're undercutting your own guys you signed. Then there's the angle where it was basically implied like, oh, thing with ZywOo is, like, I don't know if maybe he's more talented than Simple, because Simple seems like he works really hard. Why on earth are you ever undercutting like the best player ever? And not only that, but making some like utterly, in my opinion, inane assessment of ZywOo and Simple. Like, first of all, how do you know how much Simple practices? You're just going off stuff you've seen on stream. Two, I've never understood that trash talk. Essentially, it's a shit version of the trash talk that made UKCS terrible at Counter-Strike, which goes like this. Yeah, you might be better than me, maniac, but you probably just bloody try all the time, you loser. I was fucking women last night and I'm half as good as you, so who's really better, right? Well, the joke is, if you actually care about the game, you go, well, him in arguably, like you just said he's way better than you, you're out fucking women. Like, only to a fucking kid does that seem cool. Like, I don't know why that'd be good. Guess what? That sounds like fucking ZywOo doesn't work hard enough, then you dumb fuck. If he's just going to be the second or third best player, by your own logic, he should work hard and become number one. That doesn't make sense. But the whole point is it gets everyone talking. So to me, there's a whole bunch of there was another one as well, where it was basically implied that like the fucking Astralis players could have gone elsewhere for maybe 2 or 3 times the salary, but they chose Vitality. What a weird argument to make. My angle, if I'm Vitality, is, of course, I broke the bank. I just signed 2 of the greatest players ever. I'm putting together a Real Madrid of Counter-Strike and we're going to win the major. Why are you then going, you know what, I even got for way cheaper than they're worth. And you know what? They chose not to go. What? I don't. Aside from getting attention, and by the way, I'm talking about right now, so in that sense, it's worked. I don't know what the point of these statements are. Like, I can't tell if they're all legit and they really just have, I mean, in this case, an outrageous stereotypical French arrogance / hubris, because, like, these statements are outrageous. Just bearing in mind, as I say, these aren't people who were very front-facing to the international community. Like, outside of the French scene, nobody knows, like, the old Maniac. Nobody knows. I don't even know the name of the esports director. Like, they're not famous people in that sense. So, actually, I don't know their personalities to know their characters. So, I don't know. Like I say, I'll leave it open-ended for you guys. But I found, essentially, these statements all kind of, like, either missed or I don't think they accomplished what they wanted, personally. Like, I think there's going to be a lot of memes based around this, personally.
So I just want to preface my comments that I haven't read the entire, because I know there's like a very long interview on HG, so I don't want to be talking out of my ass, but I get the sense. I get the gist of what you're saying. And I think there is this idea that is trying to be put across that Vitality as an org is something bigger than the players coming in, than what is going on.
Right.
And I don't personally like that. I understand what they're trying to do, because they're trying to create, I guess, in the mind of the players and the community, something bigger, greater. Doesn't matter if tomorrow they lose Zywu, Vitality will remain Vitality. I think that's what they're trying to do. But I think it's at the expense of the players joining. I agree, it's kind of undercutting as well. I don't want to know that Astralis could have gone somewhere they win it for less money. I don't want to know. I want to think that they joined the team because they see a competitive aspect to it. They want to win. That's all I'm interested about. So I think there is a little bit of a mismatch of interest in that one as well. I have heard also that there are some digs at the players who are leaving, and I don't really like that. I think there's no point in that. I think what they have established as players, like Ixtas, for example, as a coach, was fantastic. I don't want to read anything bad or what. I don't think it's necessary. You've had a very long run. You've had arguably some great results here and there.
Sure.
It's coming to an end. As a team, I think they acted the best way possible at the end of a team. It was great to see them together, enjoy the last few events, have some decent results, go on a grand final. That was great. There's no need to throw any punches. That's it. You can just move on. So I'm not a big fan of that. But again, my take on that will remain quite modest, because I don't feel like I have the actual deep expertise.
I will say, by the way, I think you actually framed what I was trying to say better, which is essentially they are trying to do, let's be real, I mean, Zonic should know this. They're doing the Astralis approach, which is, as you say, the org is always bigger than the players, even though the Astralis is the best example ever. If there was one org that can't be bigger than the players, it's that particular fucking Counter-Strike team. It was the best team of all time. Like, let's be real, it was the players, not the org. That's just the way the game works. So, there's definitely some of that, because if people don't realise, especially in the modern day, people know that, like, most stars aren't going to stay in one team for 6 years. So they want to make it like, they don't want people to think it's Zywu-ality, because then if Zywu leaves, as you say, what's Vitality, right? It's just nothing. Come on then, Maui, what do you think on this topic?
So there's a couple things that struck me in the interview of what you said and what I read about it. The first is that I'd say the Neo guy is just trying to prop himself up a lot. He probably wonders, why is the CEO of an organization not having more followers on Twitter than their best players?
Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's why he wants to prop himself up. Like, look at how good of a businessman I am. I got them for cheaper. Those kind of little things, those comments are just like, that, again, like you're saying, Thorin, those are not necessary for me to know that you guys made a slam dunk deal. Like, I like when I know that people are spending a lot in the Counter-Strike space. Another thing is that the whole angle of Zywu versus Simple, like, but Zywu doesn't even have to try that hard. It's like, were you labeled as a gifted kid as a child? Because no one gives a fuck today. Like, just don't worry about that. If you're not trying anymore, you like, I don't know how he got this position on this thing. So I would have assumed he achieved something in his life so that he had the CV necessary to get put into the CEO position of Vitality. But right now he's reading to me like he wants to show everybody how little he tries, how little he spends, and yet they still succeed, which is like a really kind of self-perpetuating toxic way to like perceive yourself. It's going to just lead to you having a lot more faults, and it's kind of like the people that do that are people that just kind of want to always give themselves a little bit of a comfort zone, so that, oh, if I fail, I wasn't really trying.
The get out of jail free card, yeah.
But then because they know that if they do try and they fail, then they're going to have to face the brutal reality that they couldn't succeed or live up to what they thought they were capable of doing. There were some other lines in this that were a little weird.
By the way, there's a quick sidebar on that point there, though, because actually I want to get Maniac's take on that, because if people don't know, that is probably the most famous sort of almost character flaw of the French psyche, is the idea that, like, the coolest guy is the guy who fucks around like Conor McGregor and does cocaine and fucks a bitch and then beats you in the fight. That's actually considered cooler than the guy who just, like Kobe Bryant, work like 12 hours a day and then win because you were practicing more. That is sort of almost part of the character, right?
It is, and I think Maui nailed it completely when he said very basically that if you as an individual try your hardest and fail, then you have come to the limits of who you are. And it is a very, very terrifying idea and a terrifying concept. I know, I'm going to be honest with you guys. You've just summarized my studies. That's who I was. I was really good, not excellent. Because I always had a little bit of space. I could have done more for my thesis, but I didn't do it. I got a good grade, not the best one, but I could have worked more. And I think that is a lot of individuals have that breathing room that they leave for themselves, where they are very scared to give their everything, because then you meet your limits. And I don't think as a society, a lot of people are ready to do that. So I think you nailed it, Maui. And it might be prevalent in the French scene to an extent, but I think it's a very human trait to try and protect yourself with a little bit of breeding room so that you can always hide in that shadowy zone that you left yourself in case it doesn't work out. But it's also when you do that, you never really amount to anything great because you never really gave you 200%.
What was the rest of your point anyway, Maui?
I had some other quote that I liked in this that kind of was okay, yeah, this one. So one other point that he had in it was that he says that I told Zonic within 2 years we have to win a major, and then he says in the same interview, but in 6 months I know that we might have some problems or something. I was like, what? How long do you think these Counter-Strike rosters last? You know, like people are getting kicked within. Usually, back in the LAN days, I would say that rosters had maybe a 3 to 5 month lifespan before you have to change something if you're not winning or coming top 2, top 3, top 4 consistently. So if they're not coming out the gates, if they go 6 months without coming top 2 at an event, I'd say this roster needs to change. I have so much belief in this roster. I think that they should be a top 3 team immediately, like literally the first tournament. If they're not top 4, I guess semifinal finish, then I think there's something that needs to change right away. And I don't know if that's going to be an IGL change or what. It doesn't matter. Either way, I don't get this cushion that he thinks that this is a 2-year lifespan project. Like this makes me feel like this guy's really detached from what esports is, and he's thinking with a more like
it's more like a football take, right? Yeah,
it's more of a normal sports
if you do
mindset.
a signing, that would be reasonable in sports to be like, you know, in the next couple of years we want to win the championship. Yeah, you don't win immediately, obviously, a lot of time. Yeah.
Yeah. A sports process takes a couple of seasons to build something great, but an esports roster should be doing it within six months in my eyes. Anything longer is kind of like, all right, let's rethink things.
Want to see more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, you know, be a pleb and don't.